Try not to die. Don't misunderstand me, ladies. That's not just some friendly suggestion. It's an order. In the grand scheme, our lives are insignificant. They're light as air, much like a candy wrapper.
If you've spoken to me personally, as some fans of the channel have, you'd probably notice that I have a strong distaste for pretty much any and all weapons, for war, and for everything that goes along with those. This seems almost like an imbalance when you look at our second largest topic here on the channel of Black Lagoon. The anime is full of death and destruction, a seeming glorification of everything that I've just said I hate. Revy annihilates entire squads and massacres literal shiploads of enemies. Roberta's second arc is literally called Blood Trail as an exact call out to what she leaves in her wake. You'd think I'd hate this anime, but it's not enough to look only at what happens. A crucial part of understanding the anime and any story is why these things happen. What are the motivations of the characters, how are they shown to succeed or fail, and how does it all connect? I think Black Lagoon is making a statement about those who want to wield power in the world, and about false power developed through their weak actions and contrasted against the actions of other characters, those who are actually strong and worthy of being so, shown through their successes. And for that, we have to return to one of the characters who keeps on giving more and more depth, even as just a supporting role, Balalaika. The former Soviet captain is a wealth of real history as we covered before, but she's also at the heart of this kind of messaging. Today, through Balalaika's actions, history, mentality, and how all of these influence her interactions with other characters, we'll see just how Black Lagoon points out key elements of true strength: understanding, respect, and acceptance of cost. One of the highlights of Black Lagoon is how it emphasizes the weakness of its characters. This is exceptionally true of Rock and Revy, but they'll come later. First, I want to talk about some more minor characters. The anime is chock full of wannabes and gangsters who throw weapons around as if they could personally own Roanapur. Men like Chen, Chief What's Up, Abrego, Orochio, Chaka, the entire gang of Nazis, and so on. They all share one thing, and that's a fundamental misunderstanding of power. They see it as an end in itself rather than the means to an end that power should be. It's like hoarding a pile of money and never using it. You can use money to make money, but when you never actually spend it, it seems a bit selfish and stupid, doesn't it? Especially when there's a limited supply. Power is the same way. Considering their needs to be met, why would anyone take an action like that? Well, the anime makes this clear: weakness. These characters are all shown in a pretty negative light. Mr. Chen tries to cowardly strong-arm and then murder the Lagoon Company and dies for it. Chief What's Up is corrupt and greedy, concerned only with lining his own pockets in a very loathsome way. The heads of the Italian and Colombia mafias are all short-tempered, disrespectful, or clearly lacking an understanding of the situations around them. Their success feels more like luck, since we're never shown a good reason for them to actually be in charge of anything. Chaka is detestable for obvious reasons, and the same for the Nazis. These characters are all shown to be weak because they have this flawed idea of power, and more which we'll cover later, but they use this to make up for their own weaknesses. Rather than work on themselves in some way, do something to make themselves feel genuinely powerful inside, they take quick and underhanded methods to hoard the commodity that is power as some sort of internal proof that they're better than they know they really are. They know they couldn't actually hold their own against people who are strong, so they try underhanded things. They send sneak attacks, or bring in deranged killers, or take hostages, and so on. They're not working for any reason or goal other than power, and they'll do anything to gain it. And weapons are a big part of this. No example makes this more clear than the Nazis, and specifically with this interaction.
Witness this mighty gun I wield! I am the only one on Earth capable of taming this terrible gun. Now witness the awesome power of this!
Shut the fuck up!
Spineless cowards who deserve no respect, Dutch rightfully calls them out as so, saying this.
What a joke. They've got the uniforms, but that's about it.
He and Revy easily annihilate the entire crew because these aren't soldiers, they're just a bunch of idiots who are trying to copy soldiers. In their minds, it's not training and discipline that makes a soldier, it's uniforms and guns and stockpiles of ammo and pointless missions. They believe that if they hold a weapon, then they'll be strong. But the weapon itself doesn't provide strength. Knowledge of, care for, and understanding about its power is what does so. It's a cowardly attempt to make themselves feel strong, knowing deep down that they're exceptionally weak. This is where we get to Balalaika and her soldiers. In an anime full so of wannabes and fake gangsters, they stand out nearly alone as true soldiers. As we've covered in detail before, they served through the hell that was the Soviet-Afghan War. They were killed and forced to kill not just men, but even child soldiers. And they didn't wake up one day and decide to kill, they were drafted, shipped off from their homes to a different country with no choice in the matter. These people didn't choose power, they were forced to gain it. Now, some of them may have enjoyed the ability to exert their will through forces as a means to feel less weak, but whether or not that's the case, it's undeniable that power became a necessity for them. Kill or be killed. They learned to be soldiers, and with that comes an understanding of power. War does not have winners, only losers, and oftentimes the goals espoused for justification are lies. But in the soldier situation, whether they believed these causes or not, their power was being used for a cause of their own. Their survival, the fate of their nation, money to send home to their families. Whatever the case, there was a reason for it other than compensation for weakness. Balalaika is a supreme example of this, growing to be a captain so respected that her men would follow her into hell, fighting directly alongside them. She didn't seek out power, but she gained it anyway, using it in service of a goal more than just power itself.
Shooting your own subordinates in the back. You can't stoop much lower than that, now can you? Here's some advice. If you can hit your target, pretty much any gun will do the trick.
Rock, what's the point? What the hell did you get out of all this?
And this difference between her and the other characters is a driving factor of their contrasting success and their interactions overall. It's no surprise that she's successful and they aren't, in the case of the other families when they clash, and the more minor players just in general, and also that she has no respect for any of them. As she says,
"But that is the past. Now we've progressed so far that our energies are wasted on squabbles with petty hoodlums."
And this is in addition to the obvious disdain she's shown in all of their interactions. She hates these people so much because they make a mockery of everything she went through by ham-fisting power. They aren't soldiers, they aren't people who were trained to handle and understand power, they're just men with guns who think a bigger boom makes them greater than a soldier. Her most prominent traits are strength, the loyalty and fear she garners alike, and things like that. The most common traits of these other characters are cowardice, fragility, weakness, overconfidence. That's intentional because it's making a point. So it's equally as fitting that many times she's the wall that their actions run into, oftentimes leading to their deaths. At the center of these retaliations by her Hotel Moscow branch is one thing: proof. Proof that these people are in fact weak. She doesn't just beat them into the ground or kill them, she humiliates them first, at least, and if nothing else. She makes a spectacle of their deaths or failures, or brings them sniveling and beaten before a crowd. This is proof, saying directly to them, you're not strong and you don't deserve to be. You never understood it and you never paid the cost to do so, and you never respected the process of it either. And those are the two other keys that go along with understanding power: respect for its processes and an acceptance of its cost. Now, the entire last group could be lumped under all three of these, but I wanted to instead break them up and focus on a different group for respect: the Romanian Twins. One of the most fucked up cases in Black Lagoon, this pair is like every other we've discussed so far, steeped in real-world history that we'll cover someday, hopefully quite soon. I started looking into it and I can say it's downright chilling and disgusting what led to their creation even before they were bought and sold. Some of the absolutely insane and idiotic action taken by leaders which ruined so many lives before they could even begin. But I'll have to save all of that for another time. When we look at the twins, we can see they do have an understanding of power and thus a reason for it, if nothing else, in their own minds. They're more like Balalaika in reference to power. They didn't choose it, but nonetheless had to find it in order to survive. Forced to kill other black market children by their pedophilic captors, they stayed alive where so many others died by becoming powerful. They learned to kill, and not just to kill, but maim, torture, and desecrate. They had to come up with more and more fucked up ways of killing to keep their captors entertained. Eventually, they were able to free themselves with this power, and they left with an understanding explained here.
I can't die, because I've killed so many people in my life. It means we get to live on for
that much longer, so we're never going to die.
It may not even be close to true, but to them it became so to cope with what they had to do. They understand power, but by no fault of their own, they don't have a respect for it. For this case, it's better to look at Balalaika's side of things first. In Roberta's blood trail, she explains her wishes to Major Shane Claxton, wishing for good, honest wartime combat. I don't believe there's such a thing as that, but there is a distinction between murder and combat. One is an overpouring of emotion or weakness, or a situation that somehow went too far and was forced to go too far, maybe. The other is cold, hard, calculating. It's not a moment, it's a series of them. It's the culmination of planning and battles before it, predictions of what will come after it. War is murder, but murder doesn't summarize war. This is the distinction that Balalaika is drawing. Her soldiers fight in uniform, they maintain their weapons, and then utilize them to the best of their ability. They have formations and squads that they use to execute strategy as she reports back in summarized code, planning for the next move. There's a coldness and efficiency to most of Balalaika's warlike actions because that coldness is a respect for power. To be deserving of it, she has to show it respect, that at the end of the day, it is still murder, even if she comes to enjoy parts of it. The more perfect her plans go, the more she respects power by putting in the effort. Again, I don't agree with some honor to war, but I do agree that if it must happen, it deserves respect for the lives being lost. If the situation becomes so dire that we reach the last resort of death, it should be quick and efficient. And when she isn't being cold and calculating, it's usually because another party had already disregarded that respect, so she does show as well to teach them a lesson. And we'll see that here in just a moment. And then in contrast, we have the twins. Again, by no fault of their own, they disrespect power. The way they conduct themselves is a show because that's what they learned murder to be. They only survived if it was flashy and horrific, so they don't make it a quick battle and call it a day. They lure their opponents in and then begin to maim them. They shoot out their legs and drag them away. They make the scene a bloodbath, and then to go even further, they torture them to a slow and painful death, rejoicing in the agonized screams for help. It's some immensely fucked up learned behavior. But our Soviet captain isn't a very compassionate woman. She doesn't care what went into these actions, she just cares that they happened. So her way of dealing with the twins is just like in our last case, she's teaching them. If they want to make combat into some horror show, then she'll do the same. Her troops lure one of them into a trap, shoot out their leg and arm, and then she watches and monologues as they slowly die. This is their torture, their education of what they did wrong by making them experience it firsthand. She makes it an act of retribution, and also a good showing of our next point, the cost of power. As we've said, power is a commodity. There's a limited supply of it based on its nature, and like anything else subject to scarcity, it comes with a cost. Again, this is also relevant to every case we've covered so far as well, but we'll be highlighting it here. In the most obvious way, part of its cost is a target on your back. Rival gangs will seek to destroy you, while politicians seek to curtail your influence or have you overthrown, while others underneath you will want your position and stab you in the back, and so on, and so on, and so on. And it's not limited just to the cost after the fact, but beforehand as well, the cost to actually gain power. In the case of the twins, every fucked up thing they had to endure was the cost of power. Balalaika is, once again though, the best example of this. I covered this in great detail before, so I won't belabor the point here, but it's relevant once again. Balalaika was born into the family of a Soviet general, affording her a decent comfort in her childhood, but one that wouldn't last. Her grandfather promised her she could compete in the Olympic Games as a marksman and restore her father's honor, but first she had to put those skills to use for her country. This turned into her fighting in the Soviet-Afghan War. She gave her life up for her nation in every way but death, all in the promise she could return to family honor and the personal glory of an Olympian. Naturally, none of this happened. Instead, she and most of the other veterans returned home to a dying nation with neither the want nor the resources to provide for the people whose lives they destroyed by shipping them away. Out-of-touch leaders wasted the Soviet Union's resources, and just before 1992, the hammer and sickle flew for the last time in their true meaning. Her and her men gave their all on the premise that this war was necessary for their country or their lives within it, and it didn't even exist anymore. They had nothing. No pay for the end of their services, no nation to support them, no jobs after years of being away, no homes. All they had left was useless power. So this is what Balalaika capitalizes on taking them to Roanapur and throwing her weight around. From their lack of purpose, she formed one, keeping their skills sharp for the next great war. War had stolen everything from them, but the act of war itself, so war became the entire purpose for their being. Power, by no choice of their own, had consumed their entire lives. That's the cost of power they had to pay their very beings. That's the cost of true power, not the false strength shown by the wannabes and other gangsters of the anime.
These medals are proof of what these people did. We don't have the right to take that away from them. Cut them down until not even a stump remains. Only that will free her.
I feel like everyone is dancing on the palm of my hand, Rev.
This is also the source of her negative interactions with many characters throughout the series, Rock being the most notable. At the end of the day, Rock is clearly no gangster, but he does fail because he lacks the power and because he's weak. When he forces a plan on Garcia or on Yukio, when he asks Balalaika to kill for his own goals, that is his weakness showing. He's attempting to take power without ever paying the cost of doing so, just like a leader sending someone else's children to war. Without losing anything themselves, they gain a spoil reserved for those who've paid into the system. It's an avoidance of cost, plain and simple. This is the main feature of Rock's weakness. Again, I'm no fan of weapons, so I enjoy Rock's aversion to them and I think it makes him a strong character. But for the world he's in, there's a cost to action, and that cost is usually blood. That's what Roanapur understands and what it requires. And Rock knows this. By refusing to ever take part in that himself based on his ideals, he reaches the unsavory conclusion that yes, he is asking for
the death of others at the hands of someone else,
as Balalaika explains. And she rightfully berates Rock because he's making a mockery of the cost of power, the same as those who shipped her off to war. He understands it, seeking to use it as a means to an end, saving Yukio, and he respects it knowing that it will lead to a loss of life, but he refuses to accept those things onto himself as a cost. You can see this is Balalaika's issue from the very start of their interaction. Her first rebuttal is,
"You're not my fellow soldier, my comrade over with Hotel Moscow."
He's not someone who's paid the cost for power, a soldier, or someone who has it over her, Hotel Moscow, and he won't even pick up a gun himself, which I'm sure is something she loathes. But what's important here isn't the weapon itself, but what we said earlier, what goes into using it properly. He rightfully rejects weapons as something unnecessary, but in its proper context, a weapon is a symbol of this cost more than anything else. They're tools not of defense or of enjoyment, but of destruction. That's their purpose, and that's what they are. They're the most efficient method of death. This is what soldiers understand and what the wannabes of the show miss. It's what Rock finally accepts when he asks instead for Balalaika not to spare the Washimine clan, but rather to wipe them out entirely. That's why she hands him the gun and tells him it's his. Now he doesn't accept it, but she seems to move on well enough, content with what's happened. And that's because, well, this was a lesson like any other case. As they leave, we learn what Balalaika did had no bearing on Yukio's future. She'd already told the clan to go into hiding and formed her plan with Ginji. Yukio had already accepted the cost of power where Rock hadn't, and this delay cost him of finally having to accept not just failure, but cost itself. Balalaika reveals this information to him with a smile after making him in some small way participate in these killings. I think that's the reasoning behind her excess of insults here and making sure Rock was translating them. As she says,
"Keep up with me here, Rock."
It's 100% her sadistic nature, but it's also a jab at the former salaryman. And then she leaves, having taught Rock that until he's ready to take the brunt of things on himself, all of his actions will fail, capped off with the picture she sends him. A statement that Yukio had already been marked, already chosen to accept the cost of her actions. I think Yukio's ending is very fitting for this. Rock was trying to save her from the situation around her, which was the only thing he could do. If Rock could kill that situation around her, in what he tried to do quite literally, then she would have no need for power. But she'd already started down the path, and she recognized the cost of those actions that Rock refuses to. Yukio's suicide isn't just Rock failing, it's a completion of Balalaika's message, "You were wrong, Rock." It's proof that whatever he did, he couldn't overcome power's grip on Yukio's life. And this leads him personally down the path of gaining more power in the service of destroying power. From day one, that's what Rock is about. In Japan, someone had power over him. Here in Roanapur, it's the same. And look at what it does to him. Look at what it did to Yukio and what it did to everyone. There's one character who escapes this cycle, and that's Garcia. I've mentioned in videos before that he's essentially a perfected Rock, someone with the same idea but who doesn't fall victim to Roanapur. I could go on a lengthy rant about how similar they are, but I feel like the anime does that job well enough. What's important is in their final interactions. Rock pushes Garcia into the exact situation that he rejected, taking responsibility and danger into his own hands and holding the symbol of that cost, the weapon. Garcia knew that to fix this situation, he had to and wanted to step in personally. He couldn't rely on the power of someone else to reach the result he wanted. And while it may all be a farce that took advantage of the situation, this much is true. Garcia bore the cost of what he wanted himself. He took Roberta's bullet to save her. He used the idea of a weapon, but didn't resort to using the weapon itself. That's why he's the ideal Rock, and why his slice of the situation succeeds where the former businessman's fails. Rock recognizes power, but seeks to use others to avoid the cost and do what he refuses to do. Garcia accepts power, true power, and everything that goes along with it, and then discards it back into the supply when he doesn't need it anymore. He used it for a purpose and let someone else take it back. Then he leaves the city of the dead. He's able to escape, having done everything via true power, leaving behind all those who abuse it, hoard it, or bastardize it. Roanapur is a den of villains, and him staying an outsider is one of the most important details to show his success against a city of failures. Now, for our discussion here today, I separated power out into 3 sections, but in reality, every case bleeds into every section, as we've already noted. It's easier to break things down into sections to go over them, but these are really just pieces of one concept that always go together. While they may make up power, we also have to fully understand its nature as a commodity. It has limits. A lot of the faltering of those with power is in searching for too much or overstepping their bounds. Balalaika may be insane and may do awful things in her sadistic nature, but this is something she's shown to be very aware of, this limitation. At the end of the day, there are people above her in Hotel Moscow, and she doesn't cross them. There's room to some extent, as we see she assaults her boss in Japan, because he was like every other person she punished throughout the series. He didn't fight himself, he didn't respect the process, and he didn't pay the cost. He did none of it. So she comes right out and tells him some of this, saying,
"It's hard for me to remember the bosses who rose up using money instead of skill."
But you'll notice she didn't decide to kill him right there, and that's important.
That man disgusts me, honestly. Intimidation with handguns will amount to nothing.
The discipline and power of a truly elite fighting force.
She may hate him, and maybe even more than some of the people who've crossed her given he's above her, but she understands that power is a delicate balance and that it doesn't solve everything. If she oversteps and tries to take too much, then she could lose it all. And there's an even more apt example, the last appearance we see of Balalaika in the anime, as she offers assistance to Shane Caxton in the Americans Against Roberta. She hates them given they're the ideal version of everything that went wrong with her life. I mean, Shane Caxton is an elite soldier still serving years later in a country which is standing strong. Their comparisons even go so far as to say he became a hero for saving a child and she became an outcast for it. She despises this man on the principles of her very own life, but she assists him. The idea driving this final act of Blood Trail is that if the Grey Fox unit dies here in Roanapur, it'll force an investigation which will lead to the destruction of the city under the scrutiny of a world superpower, essentially closing off their drug trade and the main source of income for the city. Rock's plan is to have the Americans live and still achieve this end by directing them to the very source of the drug trade that sustains the city. As far as Balalaika is personally concerned, this is what she's been waiting for in terms of a fight. As she says,
"You and your men are the ones that we really wanted to fight."
They're equals, not just elite soldiers, but people who understand power to the same degree, the respect and understanding, the cost and limitation. But she can't fight them because her power is not great enough to overcome the situation. She has to look after the city first and then her own interests. Not just for Hotel Moscow's sake, but for her own. Where would they go without Roanapur? What would they have left once again? This limitation is one of the most impactful moments of her character to me. She recognizes the power isn't a tool simply to seek one's own desires, even if she does use it that way at times. This is a continued respect of it, recognizing there's certain things power won't or can't change. And this situation is one of those times. It's also extremely important to note who she exerts physical power over. The ones she wishes to do it on are all other soldiers, other people who have an understanding and purpose like hers. It's a respect for power in combat. The people we see her have to utilize her power against, though, these gangsters and mafia and rogue killers, these are situations which go against the idea of power in some way. They're people who force her hand, or it's orders from above, or someone who she views as needing a lesson in the truth of power. For example, she's extreme with the Washimine clan, although this is under the orders of her bosses, and also because she sees them as underhanded, breaking a prior agreement to try and steal power from the other families. It doesn't make her a good person, and she performs the actions with joy once given the reason to, but it sticks her to this understanding of power. This is exceptionally important to making her truly powerful. She's not just sitting around dreaming of some opportunity to use her guns on people to make herself feel strong. She knows she is, and her actions consistently reflect that. But she falls to one of the dangers of power: hierarchy. This is another cause of her lessons and sadism. It's a sort of know your place idea. Because it's limited, those with it often strike down those without to reserve their supply. This is easy to confuse with the aspects of power, and this will help to explain some of the issues you've probably taken with this video so far. I've been speaking like Balalaika is defending an idea of power 100% of the time, and while she is at points, that's not all of it. When power reaches a certain point, the defense of it becomes easily blurred with a defense of the idea behind it. Slaughtering the Washimine clan is a rejection of them trying to cheat their way ahead with the means of someone else. But it's also just as true that they were trying to upset a hierarchy which those with power see as a threat. They could never be trusted not to do the same again in the future, and so she slaughters them all. The lines between an impartial defense and a biased hoarding become almost indistinguishable. It's the classic Black Lagoon gray area. A sympathetic villain, one who may have good intentions and understandability deep down, or who may just be evil. And this is a good time to firmly state that I'm not saying she's a good or respectable person in every way, just that she forms a good contrast against a lot of the human weakness portrayed in Black Lagoon. I've witnessed so many people around me over the years make the same mistakes we see in the anime. They conflate weapons with power itself. They try to achieve power simply because, to prove something insignificant to themselves, they refuse to accept the cost that comes along with power and the chasing of it, and I wanted to highlight how the anime warns us of those things. Much like Metal Gear Solid is an anti-war war story, I think Black Lagoon is an anti-violence violent anime. There may be moments that are looked at as badass, or scenes where characters are viewed as the pinnacle of physical power, but all of that needs to be taken within context. Revy is one hell of a marksman and exceptionally gifted and understandable, but she's also a murderer who ends a lot of the arcs bloodied or bruised or concussed or full of holes. Chang has moments that make him look even stronger than Revy, but he's an asshole manipulator who views black market orphans and regular citizens as pointless scum alike. Takanaka is a military commander with force at his disposal, but he has no identity outside of that remaining. He fights simply so his life isn't pointless. Roberta nearly gives up her mind in addition to the body she's mostly lost. Kinji cuts a bullet in half and dies to one through his throat. Rock, the direct center of the anime, is a full-on example of how power corrupts people, as he fails to change the world around him and then falls victim to the evils that allow people to do so. As we said, he fails to power, trying to destroy power. In Balalaika, for how much she may show the positive aspects required for it, is still a warning. She exemplifies it in many ways, but would you say she's a good person? I understand why she is how she is, as I do with most of the characters, but could you say this is what we should strive to be? She doesn't always follow the formula we've laid out here today. She's sadistic and excessive, wanting to dance in the pits of hell. She's not just a pushback against fake power, but like Rock, a warning against it. A message of, look what it does to people. These are all people in pain in a city of the dead where life is just vaguely trying to maintain what little you have left. In all of this context, I find Black Lagoon's badassery to form a cautionary tale. It says, among many other things, consider your power, your ambition, and if it's all really worth it. If you really want a plot reserved in the city of the dead. So that will do it for another discussion on the second most populous and most popular topic on the channel, Black Lagoon. I'll have some a card on screen now. If you check those out, there'll be a link to more Black Lagoon videos, some of the profiles giving more depth to Balalaika, Roberta, Rock, characters we've discussed. But also, I'm going to put a Psychopath video up there, which is very similar to this one in terms of what it's discussing and looking at overall messaging and what we can learn from it, that I did on Psychopaths. If you haven't seen it, I summarize it at the beginning, so I think it's a good watch if these kind of topics interest you and you want to kind of think about society and power and things like that, so I'll have that listed up there as well, because this discussion was much more like that than our usual character profiles that have kind of dominated Black Lagoon here. And I do have more of those in the future, more history planned in the future as well, but if you like this style, let me know down below, because I have a few other topics like this, kind of, I think, one with Rock and the characters he does and doesn't sympathize with, presents some interesting conclusions that I'm kind of thinking about. So if you want to see more kind of in general messaging, how we can learn from Black Lagoon things, let me know if you like this one down below, and with the like button and all that stuff, because in addition to me seeing it and wanting to, and knowing that you want more of it and seeing your thoughts on it, the stuff I always love, it also does really help the channel out to get comments and likes, as I like to be transparent with and let you know. It does greatly help out the channel. So that's why, in addition to wanting to hear what you are talking about and what you thought and seeing what you like, it does help out the channel. So I would greatly appreciate those. I'll have some more links in the pinned comment. I'll have my Twitter, my Discord, and my Patreon, which is the most important one, where if you really want to support us in an even greater way, you can get your name at the end of videos. When we get enough people, we'll go ahead and giving some extra benefits there as well. But for right now, you'll be one of the awesome people on this end screen right here. But anyway, another video, subscribe thing on screen, and I'll say thank you for watching, and I hope I'll see you again soon.